I am very troubled about Brexit. It's well known in this House that I believe that we have made a historic mistake in voting to leave. I am very open-minded as to what the best course of action should be, whilst respectful of the decision of the electorate in the referendum result. I dislike very much the extent to which we can be fettered or pushed into frameworks of what we have or have not to accept in that negotiation. But that is, if I may say so, a reason why I should also give as much latitude to the concerns of my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, as she indicates to me she might have.
Well, my right honourable friend.
I wish to conclude. So, in those circumstances, I think that there is an issue which I can't ignore. Now, as the House will have noticed, this afternoon a statement was tabled, or was sent, which will be a written ministerial statement tomorrow, by the Secretary of State. The first part of it deals with the position of the Speaker. And of course, if I may put it slightly, the piquancy of this is that, having on the one hand said that an unamendable motion to note is an unamendable motion to note in a statute, the fact is it really has absolutely no force at all, because the reality is it's part of the standing orders of this House. It's not open to any interpretation in any court, and it will ultimately be entirely your responsibility, Mr. Speaker, to decide what can or shouldn't be treated as a neutral terms motion. So actually it highlights the fact that although this debate has been about trying to provide assurance, not just in this House, but to many, many members of the public outside who are worried about the end of this process and what might happen, though it's been designed to provide assurance, the truth is the assurance doesn't lie in the words of the statute, except insofar as the statute is the word of the government. The assurance lies in the hands of this House, and in the first part of this statement, in the power of the Speaker. I then insisted that a second piece be put into it, which I will read out. It says, and if I may say so, it's something which ought to be blindingly obvious. The government recognises that it is open for ministers and members of the House of Commons to table motions on and debate matters of concern, and that, as is the convention, parliamentary time will be provided for this. And the truth is that if this House chooses to debate matters, including matters on which it may wish to have multiple motions, the reality is that if we wish to exert our power to do it, we can. And in the circumstances that might follow a no deal, which would undoubtedly be one of the biggest political crises in modern British history, if the House wishes to speak with one voice, or indeed multiple voices, and compare those, the House has the power to do it. And the suggestion coming from... I shall give way to the honourable gentleman.
I'm grateful. The bit I don't understand is, in the last few years, there have been lots of things carried by this House. Motions tabled by the Backbench Business Committee, by the opposition, by ordinary members of the House. The government has just let them go through and then completely ignore them. Yes. The only thing that has legislative effect is legislation. That's why we have to have a meaningful vote, not a pretend one.
Yes, the right honourable gentleman is right, but we take just a pause and consider where we are. If we accepted the government, if the government were to concede the motion as drafted, the amendment as drafted in the laws for an amendable motion, it must be understood by the House that the government could ignore it. And I can assure the House it would not be enforceable in any court of law. No, it's really got to be understood. It would not. It could not be enforceable in any court of law, because that would entirely undermine the rights and privileges of this place. It would be for us to enforce it. And, of course, the ultimate sanction that this House has is a motion of no confidence. But, short of that, there are other means by which the House can, in fact, bring its very clear view to bear on the government. Now, in view of that acknowledgement... No, I won't. Sorry. In view of that acknowledgement, I have to say I weigh that and the clear words of this statement against what my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, has told me about her anxieties. And my judgment, and it's a purely personal one, is that my view is that if that is the issue, then having finally obtained, I have to say with a little bit more difficulty than I would have wished, the obvious acknowledgement of the sovereignty of this place and its over the executive in black and white language, I am prepared to accept the government's difficulty and support it. I'm prepared to accept the government's difficulty and, in the circumstances, to accept the form of amendment it wants. I'd like to emphasise one other point. I shall formally move at the end of this. I don't wish to deprive the House of the right to vote on this if it wishes. It's absolute right to disagree, but speaking personally, it seems to me that with that acknowledgement having been properly made, with that acknowledgement having been properly made, I am content to go down that course. And finally, Mr. Speaker, because I want to sit down. Finally, I just want to say this. The difficult. No, I wish to end. Finally, I want to say this. We do face some real difficulties at the moment. It's rightly said that those who the gods want to destroy, they first render mad. And I have to say there's enough madness around at the moment to make one start to question whether collective sanity in this country has disappeared. Every time sensible, reasoned argument tries to be presented in this House, vilification and abuse follows, death threats for right honourable and honourable friends. There is a hysteria which completely loses sight of the issues that we have to really consider. And I have to say there's an atmosphere of bullying which has the directly opposite consequence, that it puts people into a position where they feel that they are unable to compromise, because by doing so they will be immediately described as having lost, as if these were arguments to be lost or won. The issue must be that we get it right.